The cold bit deeper than any wolf's teeth ever could. Elara Ashwood lay crumpled in the snow, her frail body shaking so violently that her bones felt like they might shatter from the inside. The wind howled through the dense Montana pines, carrying with it the scent of her own blood, metallic, sharp, damning. She had stopped crying an hour ago. Maybe 2. Time didn't move the same way when you were dying. Above her, the sky stretched gray and merciless, thick with clouds that promised more snow. The kind of snow that buried things. The kind that erased mistakes. And that's what she was to them. A mistake? Please? She had begged Alpha Garrett Silverpine when he stood over her in the packhouse courtyard that morning. His jaw set, his eyes as cold as the coming storm. Please! I didn't steal the medicine. I swear on the goddess, I didn't enough. His voice had cut through her like a blade. You've been nothing but a burden since the day you were born, Elara. Your mother died bringing a weakling into this world, and you've done nothing to honor her sacrifice. The pack had gathered to watch. Wolves she'd grown up with. Wolves she'd served, cleaned for, bled for. Not one of them had spoken in her defense. Not even Mira, her childhood friend, who now stood at the Alpha's side, wearing the stolen vial of Wolfsbane antidote around her neck like a trophy. Mira had framed her, and no one cared enough to question it. The Silverpine Pack does not tolerate thieves, Garrett continued, his voice booming across the snow-packed courtyard. Especially not Omegos who steal medicine meant for our warriors. You'll be taken to the northern border and left there. If the goddess finds you worthy, she'll send help. If not, ... double quotes, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. The wolves who dragged her to the edge of pack territory didn't speak. They didn't look at her. They dumped her in the snow like garbage and walked away, their paw prints disappearing into the white wasteland behind them. And now, here she was, dying. Her lips had turned blue. Her fingers were numb. Her wolf so small, so Scylla had retreated deep inside her mind, whimpering like a pup. I'm sorry, Elara whispered to her wolf. I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough. The snow beneath her cheek was soft now, almost warm. That's how you knew the end was close. She thought about her mother, a woman she'd never known, who had died screaming her name into the void. She thought about the life she'd never lived, the mate she'd never meet, the love she'd never feel. She thought about Mira's smile as the guards dragged her away, and she thought, with a bitter broken clarity, I was never meant to survive this world. Her heartbeat slowed. The world dimmed, and then sound, low, rhythmic, paws crunching through snow. Elara's wolf stirred, confused, struggling to surface. The footsteps stopped. She felt him before she saw him, a presence so overwhelming, so primal, that it pulled her back from the edge of death like a hand yanking her from drowning water. Warmth, not from the snow, from him. Her eyes fluttered open barely, and through the haze of frost and fading consciousness, she saw a wolf, massive, black as midnight. Eyes like molten gold, burning with something she couldn't name. He stood over her, his breath fogging in the frozen air, his body tense, trembling. And then he shifted. The transformation was brutal, fast, soundless. A man knelt where the wolf had been. Tall, broad-shouldered, scarred across his chest and arms like he'd fought wars and survived them all. His hair was dark, wild, dusted with snow. His face was sharp, handsome, in a dangerous, feral way. But it was his eyes that broke her. Gold, fierce, devastated. He stared at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. No, he whispered, his voice rough, shaking. No, no, no. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her body like he was afraid to touch her, afraid she'd shatter. His voice cracked. You're Elara didn't understand. She tried to speak, but her lips wouldn't move. The man, whoever he was, let out a sound that was half growl. His hands finally touched her, carefully lifting her from the snow, cradling her against his chest. It was so warm, so impossibly warm. I've got you, he murmured, his voice breaking. I've got you, little wolf. You're safe now. I swear on my life, you're safe. his scent wrapped around her pine smoke earth, something wild and untamed. And beneath it all, something else, something that made her wolf scream. Mate! Before we begin this journey into one of Montana's darkest and most emotional stories of fate and rebirth, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. And if this is your first time on our channel, subscribe now because what you're about to hear is a story that legends tried to hide, but memory refused to forget. Elara's vision blurred again, but this time it wasn't from the cold. It was from the heat radiating off the stranger holding her like she was made of glass. "Who? ... she managed to whisper. The man looked down at her, his jaw tight, his eyes glistening. "Kane," he said softly. "My name is Kane Blackthorn. And you?" Little Omega ... double quotes. He pressed his forehead to hers, his voice "You're my fated mate." The world went dark, but for the first time in her life, Elara wasn't afraid of the darkness, because she wasn't alone in it anymore. Elara woke to warmth, not the false warmth of freezing to death-real warmth, the kind that seeped into her bones and made her body remember what it felt like to be alive. She was lying on something soft, force, maybe. The air smelled of burning wood, pine, and something earthy and wild that made her wolf stir with cautious curiosity. Her eyes fluttered open. A cabin, small, rugged, built from thick logs and stone. A fire crackled in a stone hearth across the room, casting flickering orange light across rough-hewn furniture and pelts hung on the walls, and sitting in a chair near the fire, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands, was him. Kane Blackthorn, the rogue alpha who had pulled her from the snow. Her mate. The word felt impossible, foreign, like a language she'd never been taught to speak. He must have sensed her movement, because his head snapped up instantly. Those golden eyes locked onto hers, and the relief that flooded his face was so raw it made her chest ache. "You're awake," he breathed. Standing so quickly, the chair scraped against the wooden floor. Elara tried to sit up, but her body protested, weak, heavy, like she'd been crushed under a mountain. "Easy," Kane said, crossing the room in 3 strides. He knelt beside the bed, his hands hovering near her but not touching, like he was afraid she'd break. "You've been out for 2 days. Your body nearly shut down completely. You need to rest. 2 days. Panic flared in her chest. "The pack, they're not coming for you," Kane said firmly, his voice edged with something dark. "They left you to die. Elara, they don't even know you survived." The sound of her name on his lips sent a shiver down her spine. "How do you know my name?" she whispered. His jaw tightened. "I've been watching the Silverpine Pack for months. I know everything about them, including what they did to you, Washington." Her voice trembled. "Why?" Kane looked away, his hands curling into fists on his thighs. "Because I was waiting." "For what?" His eyes snapped back to hers, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. "For you." Elara's heart slammed against her ribs. "I don't understand the mate bond," Kane interrupted, his voice rough. "I felt it the moment I crossed into Silverpine territory 3 months ago. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know your name, but I knew you were there. I could feel you." He dragged a hand through his dark hair, frustration and pain twisting his features. "I tried to ignore it. I told myself I didn't deserve a mate, that I was too broken, too dangerous. But the bond wouldn't let me leave." Elara stared at him, her mind spinning. "So I stayed," Kane continued, his voice dropping. "I stayed in the shadows, watching, waiting, trying to figure out who you were, and when I finally saw you..." He closed his eyes, his throat working. "You were so small, so quiet, and they treated you like you were nothing." Tears burned behind Elara's eyes. "I am nothing," she whispered. "No." The word came out like a growl. Kane's eyes snapped open, blazing with fury. "Don't ever say that again. You are everything." She flinched at the force of his conviction, and he immediately softened, his expression crumbling. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I'm sorry." He exhaled shakily. "When I found you in the snow, barely breathing, your lips blue, your heart stopping, His voice broke. I thought I'd lost you before I ever had the chance to know you. Elara didn't know what to say. She'd spent her entire life being invisible, disposable, a burden. And now, this man is powerful, scarred, dangerous rogue Alpha was looking at her like she was the sun and he'd been living in darkness. Why didn't you take me before? She asked quietly. If you knew I was your mate, why didn't you come for me? Kane's face twisted with guilt. Because I was a coward. A sighed simply. I told myself you deserved better than a rogue with no pack, no territory, no future. I thought if I stayed away, maybe the bond would fade. Maybe you'd find someone worthy of you. But you came for me when they left me to die. Because I couldn't let you go. His voice was raw, broken. I couldn't watch you die and do nothing. Even if you hate me for the rest of your life, even if you reject me the moment you're strong enough, I don't care. I'd rather have you alive and hating me than dead in the snow. Elara's chest tightened. No one had ever fought for her. No one had ever chosen her. I don't hate you, she whispered. Kane's breath hitched. You should, he said quietly. You should hate me for not protecting you sooner. You saved my life. I should have saved you months ago. Silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Finally, Elara spoke, her voice small but steady. What happens now? Kane looked at her, his golden eyes searching hers. Now, he said softly, you heal, you rest, you eat, and when you're strong enough, double quotes, he hesitated. You decide what you want. If you want to leave, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. If you want to stay, he didn't finish, but the hope in his eyes was unmistakable. Elara's wolf stirred, pressing against her mind, whispering a single word, stay. But before she could respond, a sound shattered the moment. A howl, distant, sharp, familiar. Elara's blood turned to ice. That's Silverpine. Kane finished grimly, already on his feet. His entire body had gone tense, predatory. They're close. They're looking for me? No. Kane's voice was cold, lethal. They're hunting me. The howls grew closer. Elara's hands trembled as she sat up, ignoring the wave of dizziness that crashed over her. How many? 6? Kane said, his voice flat, controlled. He was already moving, pulling weapons from hidden caches around the cabin, silver-edged knives, a hunting bow, a short blade strapped to his thigh. Maybe 7, they'll kill you. They'll try. Kane turned to face her, and the look in his eyes stopped her cold. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger. It was certainty. I've been a rogue for 5 years, Elara, he said quietly. I've survived packs, hunters, and worse. I'm not afraid of Garrett Silverpine's lapdogs, but listen to me. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that contrasted violently with the predator coiled in his body. If things go wrong, there's a tunnel beneath the cabin. It leads north toward the mountains. Follow it. Don't stop. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. His voice was firm, unyielding. Because if they find you here, they'll take you back. And I will burn that entire pack to the ground before I let them touch you again. Elara's breath caught. She'd never seen someone look at her the way Kane did, like she was worth protecting, worth dying for. Why? She whispered. Why do you care so much? Kane's jaw tightened, his thumbs brushing against her cheeks. Because you're mine, Said simply, and I protect what's mine. Before she could respond, the door to the cabin exploded inward. Wood splintered, hinges screamed, and for wolves burst inside, massive, snarling, eyes glowing with predatory hunger. Kane moved faster than Elara's eyes could track. He shifted midland, his human form exploding into a black wolf so large, so powerful, that the entire cabin seemed to shrink around him. He collided with the first Silverpine wolf, a brown-furred male Elara recognized as Dane, one of Garrett's enforcers, and the impact shook the walls. Blood sprayed. Dane yelped, crashing into the wall. The other 3 wolves circled, growling, snapping, looking for an opening. Kane stood between them and Elara, his body a wall of muscle and fury, his golden eyes blazing with lethal intent. Mine. His wolf seemed to snarl, touch her and die. One of the wolves, a grey female named Kira, lunged. Cain met her midair, jaws locking around her throat. He threw her aside like she weighed nothing, and she hit the floor with a sickening crack. But while he was distracted, another wolf, a scarred male, didn't recognize Date toward her. Elara screamed. Cain's roar shook the cabin. He launched himself across the room, crashing into the scarred wolf just inches from Elara's bed. They tumbled, a blur of black and grey fur, teeth and claws tearing into flesh. Elara's wolf surged inside her, desperate, terrified, furious. Get up! Her wolf snarled. Fight! Move! But Elara's body wouldn't obey. She was too weak, too broken. The fourth wolf, a massive brute with amber eyes, shifted into his human form, a cruel smile twisting his lips. Well, he drawled, his voice oily and mocking. The little Omega survived after all. Elara recognized him instantly. Riker, Garrett's beta. The Alpha's going to be very interested to know you're still breathing, Riker continued, taking a step toward her. Especially since you're shacked up with a rogue who's been killing our scouts. Elara's blood ran cold. Killing scouts. Riker's smile widened. Oh, you didn't know. Your precious mate has been slaughtering Silverpine wolves for months. 3 dead, 2 missing, all of them found torn apart on the border. That's a lie, Elara whispered. Is it? Behind Riker, Cain had pinned the scarred wolf to the ground, his jaws locked around the wolf's spine. With a sickening crunch, the wolf went limp. Cain shifted back into his human form, blood dripping from his mouth, his chest heaving, his eyes locked onto Riker. Get away from her, Cain growled, his voice barely human. Riker laughed. Or what, rogue? You'll kill me too. Add another body to the pile. If I have to. Cain. Don't, Elara started, but Riker moved faster. He lunged not at Cain, at her. His hand closed around her throat, yanking her off the bed, using her as a shield. Elara gasped, clawing at his grip, her vision blurring. Cain froze, his entire body going rigid. Let her go, he said, his voice deadly calm. No, Riker said, tightening his grip. Elara choked, tears streaming down her face. Here's what's going to happen, rogue. You're going to back off, or I'm going to snap her neck and take her corpse back to Garrett as proof. Cain's hands trembled, his wolf barely contained beneath his skin. Please. Elara gasped, her eyes on Cain. Please, just go. I'm not leaving you. You have to. I said no. Riker's laugh was cold. How touching. The rogue he didn't finish. Because Elara's wolf exploded. It wasn't a shift, not fully. It was something raw, more primal. Light burst from Elara's skin silver, blinding, searing. Riker screamed, his hand releasing her throat as he stumbled backward, smoke rising from his palms. Elara collapsed to her knees, gasping, her body shaking violently. And in the silence that followed, a voice echoed through the cabin, not spoken aloud, but felt in the marrow of every wolf present. Enough. The remaining Silverpine wolves whimpered and fled, crashing through the broken door into the night. Riker stared at Elara, his face pale, his eyes wide with something close to terror. What? Dot? What are you? He whispered. Elara didn't answer. She didn't know that Cain was at her side in an instant, pulling her into his arms, his hands shaking as he checked her for injuries. I'm okay, she whispered. I'm okay. But she wasn't, because as the silver light faded from her skin, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A mark on the inside of her wrist, a crescent moon, glowing faintly, etched into her flesh like a brand. Cain saw it too, his breath caught. Elara, he whispered, his voice filled with awe and fear. You're not just an Omega. She looked up at him, her heart pounding. Then what am I? Cain's golden eyes met hers, and in them she saw the answer before he spoke. Your moon marked. The mark burned. Not with pain, with power. Elara sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the crescent moon etched into her wrist. It pulsed faintly, glowing silver in the dim firelight, as if something ancient and alive had taken root beneath her skin. Cain paced the cabin like a caged wolf, his hands clenched into fists, his jaw tight. "This changes everything," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "What does it mean?" Elara asked, her voice small. "The mark. What does moon-marked mean?" Cain stopped pacing and turned to face her, his golden eyes dark with something she couldn't name all. Fear, reverence, all tangled together. "It means the moon goddess has chosen you," he said quietly. "It means you carry her blessing. Power. But I'm just a gnome, EGA, no." Cain crossed the room and knelt in front of her, his hands covering hers. "You were never just an Omega." The Silver Pine Pack was too blind to see it, but the goddess knew. She's always known. Elara's chest tightened. Then why didn't she help me before? Why did she let them hurt me? Abandon me. Cain's expression soft, pain flickering across his face. "I don't know, but the goddess doesn't work the way we want her to. She doesn't prevent suffering, she uses it, shapes it, turns it into something stronger. That's cruel." "Yes," Cain agreed quietly. "It is." Silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Finally, Elara spoke, her voice trembling. "What happens now?" "Riker saw the mark. He'll tell Garrett. The whole pack will know." Cain's jaw tightened. "Then they'll come for you?" "Why?" "I'm nothing to them." "You're everything to them now." Cain stood, his hands curling into fists. "A moon-marked wolf is the rarest thing in our world. Packs have gone to war for the chance to claim one. If Garrett realizes what you are, he won't just want you back, he'll want to own you, control you, use your power to strengthen his pack." Horror washed over Elara. "He can't. He'll try." Cain's voice was cold, lethal. "And I'll kill every single one of them before I let that happen." Elara stood on shaking legs, crossing to him. "You can't fight an entire pack alone. Watch me." "Cain, I mean it." He turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. "I don't care if it's Garrett, his enforcers, or the entire Silver Pine bloodline. No one is taking you from me. Not now. Not ever." The bond between them thrummed hot, electric, undeniable. Elara's wolf pressed against her mind, whispering the truth she'd been trying to ignore. "He's ours. He's ours. He's ours." "I don't know how to use this power," she whispered. "I don't even know what it is." "Then we'll figure it out," Cain said firmly. "Together." Before Elara could respond, a sound shattered the moment. Not a howl this time, footsteps, dozens of them. Cain's entire body went rigid. He moved to the window, peering through the cracked wood, and Elara saw his expression darken. "What is it?" she asked, her heart pounding. "The whole pack," Cain said grimly. "Garrett brought everyone." Elara's blood turned to ice. She moved to the window, and her breath caught. Through the trees, she could see them wolves, dozens of them, circling the cabin. Their eyes glowed in the darkness like stars, feral and hungry. And at the front of the pack, standing in his human form, was Alpha Garrett Silverpine, tall, broad-shouldered, silver-haired despite being only in his 40s. His face was hard, carved from stone, his eyes cold and calculating. Beside him stood Mira, Elara's former friend, the one who had framed her. Mira's expression was smug, triumphant, like she'd already won. "Cain Black," Garrett's voice boomed through the trees, commanding and absolute. "I know you're in there, and I know you have something that belongs to me." Cain's growl was low, dangerous. "She belongs to no one but herself." "Send her out," Garrett continued, ignoring him. "Send out the moon-marked Omega, and I'll let you live." "Refuse, and I'll burn that cabin to the ground with both of you inside." Elara's hands shook. "He's bluffing," Cain said quietly, though his voice was strained. "He won't risk killing you. You're too valuable." "But he'll kill you," Elara whispered. "Let him try." "Cain, please, no." He turned to face her, gripping her shoulders. "I told you before, and I'll tell you again. I will not let them take you. I don't care what it costs me." Tears burned behind Elara's eyes. "You have 10 seconds, rogue," Garrett shouted. 10 seconds, or we come in." Cain's hands trembled against her shoulders. "Go," Elara whispered. Use the tunnel. Get out of here! I'm not leaving you. You have to. I won't. Cain, 5 seconds. Ilara's wolf screamed inside her, desperate, terrified, and then something inside her snapped. Not broke. Awakened. The mark on her wrist flared so bright it lit up the entire cabin. Ilara gasped as power surged through her veins, hot and electric and ancient. Irwolf Rosé, not the small, whimpering creature she'd always known, but something bigger, stronger. Divine Cain stared at her, his eyes wide. Ilara, I'm not running, she said, her voice steady for the first time in her life. Not anymore. She walked to the door. Don't? She opened it. The pack fell silent. Garrett's eyes locked onto her, and she saw the exact moment he realized what she was. His expression shifted from anger to shock to hunger. Well, he said slowly, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Look who's still alive. Ilara stepped out into the snow, the mark on her wrist glowing like a beacon. You left me to die, she said quietly, her voice carrying through the silent trees. You were weak, Garrett replied coldly. A burden. I was innocent. You were nothing. Ilara's wolf snarled. Maybe I was nothing, she said, her voice growing stronger. But I'm not anymore. Garrett's smile widened. No, you're not. You're moon-marked, which means you belong to me. To Silverpine, I belong to no one. We'll see about that. Garrett nodded to his enforcers. They moved forward, and Ilara's power exploded. Light erupted from her body, silver, blinding, searing. The wolves yelped and stumbled back, shielding their eyes. Ilara stood at the center of it all, her hair whipping in a wind that came from nowhere, her eyes glowing pure white, and for the first time in her life, she felt strong. Touch me, she said, her voice echoing with divine authority, and I will end you. Garrett stared at her, his face pale. Behind her, Cain stood in the doorway, his expression filled with awe. That's my mate, he whispered, pride and wonder bleeding into his voice. But before anyone could move, the light around Ilara flickered. Her legs buckled. She collapsed into the snow. The power vanished, and Garrett smiled. Take her, he ordered. Cain roared and shifted, but 3 wolves were already on him, dragging him down. Ilara tried to fight, tried to summon the power again, but her body wouldn't obey. She was so tired, so broken. Strong hands grabbed her arms, hauling her to her feet. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Cain, bleeding in the snow, screaming her name. Ilara woke in silver light. Not the harsh, blinding light of her awakening power. This was soft and gentle and eternal. She lay on cool grass that shimmered like moonlight made solid, and above her, a sky stretched endlessly, filled with stars that pulsed like living heartbeats. Mid. The thought should have terrified her. It didn't. You are not dead. Child! Ilara gasped and sat up, her heart pounding. A woman stood a few feet away, impossibly beautiful, ageless, draped in flowing robes that seemed woven from starlight itself. Her hair fell like liquid silver down her back, and her eyes. Her eyes were the same glowing white as the mark on Ilara's wrist. Who? Ilara's voice broke. Who are you? The woman smiled, and it was like watching the moon rise. You know who I am. Ilara's breath caught the moon. Goddess! Yes, Ilara should have bowed, should have knelt, should have done something respectful. Instead, anger surged through her. Why? She demanded, her voice shaking. Why did you let them hurt me? Why did you let them leave me to die? The goddess's expression didn't change. Because you needed to break before you could become whole. That's not an answer. It is the only answer. The goddess moved closer, her presence both comforting and overwhelming. You were not born weak, Ilara Ashwood. You were born with a power so great that the universe itself tried to suppress it. Your pack feared what you could become, so they broke you before you could rise. Ilara's hands trembled. I don't feel powerful. I feel broken. Broken things can still cut, the goddess said gently. And you, my child, are a blade being forged. I don't want to be a blade. I just want to be free. Then take your freedom. The goddess knelt before her, placing a glowing hand over Elira's heart. Take your power. Take your destiny. But notice the path ahead will not be easy. You will face those who seek to control you, to use you, to break you again. Then why give me this power at all? Because you are not meant to be controlled. The goddess's eyes blaze. You are meant to be sovereign. Elara's chest tightened. What do I do? She whispered. You learn, the goddess said simply. You train. You grow. And when you are ready, you return to the world that tried to destroy you and you remake it? I don't know how. Wildagas stood and the realm around them began to shift. The grass beneath Elara's feet hardened into stone. The stars above blazed brighter, forming constellations she'd never seen before. This is the goddess realm, the woman said, her voice echoing. Time moves differently here. A day in your world is a month in mine. You will train here. You will learn to control your power. And when you are ready, I will send you back. Back to what? Elara asked, her voice breaking. The pack that tried to kill me. The alpha who wants to own me. Back to the rogue who would die for you. Elara's breath hitched. Cain. Is he? She couldn't finish the question. Is he alive? For now, the goddess said quietly. But if you do not return soon, he will do something foolish, something that will get him killed. Panic surged through Elara. Then send me back now. No. The goddess's voice was firm. If you return now, weak and untrained, you will be captured again. Or worse, you must be strong enough to protect yourself. Strong enough to protect him. Elara's hands clenched into fists. How long will I be here? As long as it takes. The goddess raised her hand, and the realm shifted again. A figure appeared in the distant stall, cloaked, carrying a staff that glowed with silver light. That is Seraphine, the goddess said. She will be your guide, your teacher. Learn from her, Elara, and when you are ready, I will send you home. Before Elara could respond, the goddess began to fade, her form dissolving into light. Wait, Elara called out. What about the mark? What does it mean? The goddess's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once. It means you are mine, and I do not abandon what is mine. Then she was gone. Elara stood alone in the silver realm, her heart pounding, her mind racing. And in the distance, the cloaked figure began to approach. Cain's POV blood soaked into the snow beneath him. Cain lay on his side, his ribs screaming with every breath, his vision blurred. Around him, the silver pine wolves had retreated, leaving him broken and bleeding in front of his destroyed cabin. They'd taken her. They'd taken Elara, his mate, his everything. And he'd been too weak to stop them. Rage burned through him hotter than the pain, sharper than the cold. He forced himself to his hands and knees, his body trembling, every muscle protesting. Blood dripped from his mouth, his nose, a gash across his temple. He didn't care. I'm coming for you, he thought, the words a vow carved into his soul. I don't care what it takes. I don't care how many of them I have to kill. I'm coming for you. His wolf snarled in agreement, feral and desperate. Cain shifted, his bones cracking, his body screaming in protest, but the wolf that emerged was stronger than the broken man. He threw his head back and howled. Not a call for help, a declaration of war. Elara's POV again. Elara collapsed to her knees, gasping, her body drenched in sweat. The silver light around her wrists flickered and died, leaving her feeling hollow. Drained Seraphine stood a few feet away, her expression impassive, her staff glowing softly. I can't, Elara panted. I can't do it again. Then you will die when you return, Seraphine said simply. Elara glared at her. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Seraphine's voice was cold, clinical. You are afraid of your own power. Afraid of what it makes you. Afraid that if you embrace it fully, you will become something the people you love cannot recognize. Elara flinched. Because it was true. Power is not a curse, child, Seraphine continued. Softer now. It is a gift, but gifts must be wielded with intention, with control, or they consume you. I don't know how to control it, Elara whispered. Every time I try, it feels like it's going to tear me apart. Good. Ilara's head snapped up. Good. Seraphine smiled faintly. Power that feels easy is power that is weak. True strength requires sacrifice, pain, discipline. She tapped her staff against the ground, and the realm around them shifted. Suddenly, Ilara was standing in a forest, not the Silver Realm, but somewhere real, familiar. Silverpine territory. Her heart lurched. This is an illusion, Seraphine's voice echoed. A memory pulled from your mind. But the training is real. Wolves emerged from the trees, Garrett's enforcers, their eyes glowing, their teeth bared. Ilara's pulse spiked. What, fight them? I can't fight them, Seraphine commanded, her voice echoing with divine authority, or they will tear you apart. The wolves lunged. Ilara screamed and threw her hands up. Silver light exploded from her palms. The wolves yelped and scattered, but they didn't disappear. They circled, snarling, waiting for another opening. Control it, Seraphine's voice instructed. Don't just release the power. Shape it. Command it. Ilara's hands trembled. Shape it. Command it. She closed her eyes, focusing on the power thrumming through her veins. It felt wild, chaotic, like a river threatening to drown her. But beneath the chaos, she felt something else. A pulse, steady, rhythmic, dot like a heartbeat. She grabbed onto it, pulling it close, weaving it into something she could hold. When she opened her eyes, the silver light had formed into a blade crackling, deadly, made entirely of moon energy. The wolves lunged again. Ilara moved. She was faster now, stronger. The blade in her hand cut through the first wolf like it was made of smoke, and the creature dissolved into light. The others hesitated. Ilara didn't. She fought with a ferocity she didn't know she had, slashing, dodging, moving like the warrior she was meant to be. When the last wolf fell, the forest dissolved. Ilara stood back in the Silver Realm, gasping, her entire body shaking, but she was still standing. Seraphine nodded approvingly. Better! Ilara looked down at her hands, still glowing faintly, the mark on her wrist pulsing with light. How long have I been here? She asked quietly. 3 months in this realm, Seraphine replied. 3 days in yours? 3 months. Ilara's chest tightened. Kane, I need to go back, she said urgently. I need to see. I need to know he's okay. He is alive, Seraphine said. But barely. The rogue has been hunting the Silverpine pack relentlessly, killing any wolf who ventures near his territory. He is driven by grief, by rage, by the bond. Ilara's heart clenched. He thinks you're dead, Seraphine continued. Or worse that, you've been broken beyond saving. He is losing himself to the hunt. Then I have to go back. Not yet. Seraphine's voice was firm. You are strong, child, but not strong enough. If you return now, you will be captured again, or killed, and the rogue will die trying to save you. Tears burned behind Ilara's eyes. How much longer? As long as it takes. Cain's POV6, Silverpine wolves lay dead in the snow. Kane stood over them, blood dripping from his jaws, his body trembling with exhaustion and fury. He'd been hunting them for days, now tracking, ambushing, killing. Every wolf that crossed his path was another step closer to her, to Ilara. He didn't care that he was outnumbered. He didn't care that Garrett had put a kill order on his head. He didn't care about anything except getting her back. Hold on, he thought, staring up at the moon. Please, little wolf, hold on. I'm coming. Behind him, a twig snapped. Kane spun, snarling, and froze. Standing at the edge of the clearing was a wolf he didn't recognize. Not Silverpine, not Rogue. The wolf was massive, silver-furred, with eyes that glowed like liquid moonlight. It shifted. A woman stood where the wolf had been, tall, ethereal, draped in light. Kane's breath caught. You, he whispered. The moon goddess smiled. Your mate is coming home. Kane Blackthorn, she said softly. And when she does, she will need you to be strong, not broken, not consumed by rage. Strong, where is she? Kane demanded, his voice breaking. Is she alive? Is she hurt? She is alive, and she is becoming what she was always meant to be. The goddess's expression softened. But you must be patient, rogue. What is coming will test you both. And if you are not ready, you will lose her forever. I'll be ready, Cain said fiercely. I'll do whatever it takes. The goddess nodded. Double quotes, then prepare yourself, kind black, because your mate is about to return and she will not be the fragile Omega you saved from the snow. She began to fade. Wait, Cain called out. When? When is she coming back? The goddess's voice echoed through the trees. Soon. Sailverpn Pac Garrett, POV Alpha Garrett Silverpine, stood at the window of his office, staring out at the forest beyond. 6 wolves dead in 3 days, all killed by the same rogue Cain Blackthorn. Garrett's jaw tightened. He underestimated the rogue. He'd assumed Cain would run after they took the girl, that he'd disappear into the mountains and never return. Instead, the bastard had declared war. Alpha Garrett turned. Riker stood in the doorway, his expression grim. We lost 2 more scows near the northern border. Same method. Throats torn out, bodies left as a warning. Garrett's hands clenched into fists. Where is he? We don't know. He's moving like a ghost. No scent trail. No pattern. Then find him, Garrett snapped. I want him dead before the week is out. What about the gun? Garrett's expression darkened. ELARA. The moon marked Omega. She'd been unconscious for 3 days now, locked in the Pac's holding cells beneath the Pac. Healers had examined her, tried to wake her, but nothing worked. It was as if she'd simply disappeared into herself. She's useless to us like this, Garrett muttered. I need her awake. I need her controlled. Maybe we should. A howl split the air. Not a wolf, not a rogue. Something else. Garrett's blood turned to ice. Because the howl didn't come from the forest. It came from inside the pack house. Elera's Pavellera opened her eyes. The cell around her was dark, cold, carved from stone. Chains wrapped around her wrists, silver, burning against her skin. But she didn't flinch, because the girl who had been chained here 3 days ago was gone. In her place stood Aluna. Elara rose to her feet, the chains clinking softly. The mark on her wrist blazed with silver light, illuminating the cell. She looked down at the chains, and smiled. Break, she whispered. The chains shattered, silver fragments scattered across the stone floor, and Elara stepped over them, her power humming through her veins like a song. She walked to the cell door, solid steel, locked, guarded. She placed her palm against it. Open! The door exploded outward. Wolves in the corridor yelped and scattered, but Elara didn't stop. She moved through the pack house like a storm, her eyes glowing white, her presence radiating power. Wolves tried to stop her. She swept them aside with a flick of her wrist, silver light knocking them unconscious before they could even shift. By the time she reached the main hall, the entire pack had gathered. Garrett stood at the center, flanked by his enforcers, his expression a mixture of shock and rage. And behind him, smirking like she'd already won, was Mira. ELARA, stopped at the entrance to the hall, her gaze sweeping over the pack that had abandoned her. Hello, Alpha, she said softly, her voice carrying through the silent room. Garrett's jaw tightened. You should still be unconscious. I was training. Training, Garrett scoffed. You've been comatose for 3 days. 3 months? Elara corrected, her eyes blazing. 3 months in the goddess realm, learning to control what you tried to steal from me. The pack murmured, uneasy. Garrett's expression darkened. You belong to Silverpine, Elara. You were born here, die here. And your power will serve this pack, whether you like it or not. Elara tilted her head, her smile cold. No, she said simply. I don't think so. Garrett nodded to his enforcers. Take her! They moved. Elara didn't. Silver light exploded from her body, not wild, not chaotic, but controlled, precise, divine. The enforcers hit an invisible wall and crumpled to the ground. Unconscious! The pack gasped. Garrett's face paled. You were always afraid of me, Elara said quietly, stepping forward. Even when I was weak. Even when I was nothing. You felt it, didn't you? That tiny spark of something you couldn't control? So you broke me. Humiliated me. Let me to die. You were weak, Garrett spat. I was hurt, Elara corrected, her voice sharp. There's a difference. And now, Alpha, I'm going to give you a choice. A choice. Garrett laughed bitterly. You think you can threaten me in my own pack? Jeez. The single word carried such weight, such certainty, that Garrett actually took a step back. Here is your choice, Elara said, her eyes glowing brighter. You can release me. You can let me walk out of here, and I will never return. Or Dot, she raised her hand, and silver light crackled around her fingers. I can tear this pack apart from the inside. Dot, double quotes. Silence, Dot, absolute. Suffocating silence, Dot, and then a howl. Dot from outside, Dot low, deadly, familiar. Elara's heart leaped. Kane. Garrett's expression shifted to fury. He's here. Of course he is, Elara said softly. Did you really think he'd stay away? The packhouse doors exploded inward. Kane stood in the entrance, his body covered in bloodsome. His eyes blazed gold, feral and lethal, and when his gaze found the relief and rage that flooded his face was almost painful to witness. Elara, he breathed. She smiled. Hello, mate, Garrett snarled. Kill him! The pack lunged. Kane shifted mid-leap, his black wolf colliding with the first attacker, and Elara raised her hands, silver light flooding the hall. Enough. Her voice echoed with divine authority, and every wolf in the room froze not by choice, but by compulsion. Elara stepped forward, her power radiating outward, holding the entire pack in place. I said, she repeated softly, that I would give you a choice, Garrett, but you chose violence. So now, I'm taking that choice away. She turned to the pack, her eyes glowing. I am moon-marked, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Chosen by the goddess herself, and I am done being your victim. She looked at Kane, who had shifted back into his human form, blood dripping from his wounds but his eyes blazing with pride. Are you ready? She asked softly. Kane smiled feral, wild hers. Always? Elara turned back to Garrett. This pack is over, she said quietly. And you, Alpha, are finished. Silver light exploded. Kane's POV was magnificent. Kane stood at Elara's side, blood still dripping from his wounds, his body screaming in protest, but he couldn't look away from her. The girl he'd pulled from the snow, fragile, broken, barely breathing, was gone. In her place stood a goddess. Silver light radiated from Elara's body, holding the entire silver pine pack frozen in place. Her eyes glowed white, her hair whipped by an invisible wind, and the mark on her wrist blazed like a star. She was power incarnate, and she was his. The mate bond thrummed between them, hot, electric, undeniable. Kane felt it in his bones, in his blood, in the very core of his soul. Mine. His wolf snarled. Ours. Forever. Garrett struggled against the invisible force holding him, his face twisted with rage. You, Dot, you can't do this. I can, Elara said softly, her voice carrying divine authority. And I will. She turned to face the pack, her gaze sweeping over every wolf in the room. For years, you have followed an alpha who ruled through fear and cruelty, she said, her voice steady. You have turned a blind eye to injustice. You have punished the innocent to protect the guilty. You have abandoned those who needed you most. Murmurs rippled through the frozen pack. I was one of those you abandoned, Elara continued, her voice growing stronger. I was weak, invisible, disposable. And when I needed you most, you left me to die in the snow. Garrett snarled. You were weak? Elara's eyes snapped to him, and the alpha flinched. I was innocent, she corrected, her voice sharp as a blade. I was framed by someone you trusted, and you didn't even bother to investigate. You just threw me away. She looked at Myra, who stood frozen beside Garrett, her face pale. "Tell them," Elara said quietly. "Tell them what you did." Myra's eyes widened. "I don't tell them. The command was absolute, divine, irresistible." Mira's mouth opened against her will, and the words spilled out. "I stole the medicine. I framed Elara. I wanted to be Luna, and she was in my way." Gasps echoed through the hall. Garrett's expression shifted, shock, fury, betrayal. "You what?" he growled. "I did it for us," Mira cried, tears streaming down her face. "I did it so we could be together. She was nothing, Garrett. She didn't matter." "She mattered to me," Kane snarled, his voice low and deadly. Elara placed the gentle hand on his arm, and he felt the bond pulse between them, calming, grounding, loving. "It's okay," she murmured. "I've got this." Kane forced himself to breathe, though every instinct screamed at him to tear Mira apart. Elara turned back to the pack. "This is what your alpha has allowed," she said quietly. "Lies, betrayal, innocent wolves punished while the guilty walk free." She paused. "And I will not let it continue. You have no authority here." Garrett roared, finally breaking free of the hold. He shifted massive, silver-furred, snarling. Kane moved to intercept, but Elara raised her hand. "No," she said softly. "He's mine." Garrett lunged. Elara didn't move. Silver light erupted from her body, slamming into Garrett midly. The alpha crashed to the ground, whimpering, unable to shift back. Elara walked toward him slowly, her footsteps echoing in the silent hall. "You asked if I have authority here," she said quietly, kneeling beside the fallen alpha. "Let me answer that question." She placed her hand on Garrett's head. Light flooded from her palm, and Garrett screamed, not in pain, but in revelation. When Elara pulled her hand away, Garrett lay on the ground, trembling, his eyes wide with horror. "What double quotes," he whispered. "What did you do to me?" "I showed you the truth," Elara said softly. "Every wolf you've hurt, every injustice you've allowed, every life you've broken." She stood. "That is the weight of your failures, Garrett Silverpine, and you will carry it for the rest of your life." Garrett didn't respond. He just lay there, broken in a way no physical wound could ever match. Elara turned to the pack. "I am not your alpha," she said clearly. "I am not your Luna. I am moon-marked, chosen by the goddess, and I answer to no one but her." She paused. "But I will give you this, a choice. You can stay here under Garrett's rule and continue down this path of fear and cruelty. Or ... she gestured to the open doors behind her. "You can leave. You can find a new pack, a better pack, one that values justice, honor, and compassion over power." Silence. And then, slowly, wolves began to move. First one, then two, then dozens. They walked past Garrett, past Mira, past the ruins of the pack they'd once belonged to, and they left. By the time the exodus was over, only a handful of wolves remained Garrett's most loyal enforcers, too afraid or too stubborn to leave. Elara looked at them with pity. "Then you've made your choice," she said. Quietly, Dochi turned to Kane, and the expression on her face shifted softer, warmer. His. "Let's go home," she murmured. Kane's chest tightened. Home. He'd never had one. But with her. Wolf. Elara's Piovitha walked through the forest in silence, side by side, their footsteps crunching in the snow. Elara's power had finally settled, the silver light fading from her skin, leaving her feeling ... light-free. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. Beside her, Kane limped slightly, his wounds still fresh. But he refused to slow down. "You're hurt?" Elara said softly. "I'm fine. Kane, I'm fine," he repeated, his voice rough. Then, softer, "I just need to know you're real, that you're here, that I didn't lose you." Elara stopped walking. Kane stopped too, turning to face her. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm real. And you didn't lose me." Kane's eyes glistened. "I thought when they took you, I know." She pressed her forehead to his. "I know I would have burned the world down to get you back," Kane murmured. I did burn it down. I killed anyone who stood in my way. I didn't care if I died trying. I know, Elara repeated, tears streaming down her face. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Don't apologize, Cain said fiercely, his hands framing her face. Don't ever apologize. You did what you had to do. You became what you were meant to be. And what's that? Cain smiled broken. Beautiful. Hers. Everything. Elara's breath caught. And then Cain kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, claiming a promise forged in fire and blood and moonlight. The mate bond exploded between them, so powerful, so elkins that Elara's knees buckled. Cain caught her, holding her against him, and she felt his wolf pressing against hers, whispering, "Ours, ours, forever ours." When they finally pulled apart, both of them were shaking. "I love you," Cain whispered. "I don't care if it's too soon. I don't care if you're not ready to hear it. I love you, Elara." "I have from the moment I saw you in the snow." Elara's chest tightened. "I love you too," she whispered back. "I think I have from the beginning." Cain let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled her into his arms again. They stood there, wrapped in each other, the snow falling softly around them. And for the first time in both of their lives, they felt whole. 2 weeks, La Trelara stood at the edge of a clearing, watching as wolves from 3 different packs worked together to build something new. Not a pack house, a sanctuary. After leaving Silverpine territory, word had spread quickly about the moon-marked Omega who had shattered an Alpha's rule. Wolves from neighboring packs, rogues, outcasts, Omeyas who had been cast aside began arriving at Cain's territory, seeking refuge. Datan Elara welcomed them all. "Another group just arrived from the south," Cain said, coming to stand beside her. He wrapped an arm around her waist, and she leaned into him, breathing in his scent pine. "Smoke. Home." "How many?" she asked. 7. All Omegas, all abandoned by their packs. Elara's chest tightened. "Then we'll make room." Cain smiled and pressed a kiss to her temple. "You're incredible. You know that? I'm just trying to do what's right." "You're doing more than that." Cain turned her to face him, his golden eyes soft. "You're giving wolves like us wolves who were told we were nothing a place to belong." Elara's throat tightened, because that's all she'd ever wanted. A place to belong. And now she was creating it for others. "Have you heard from Seraphine Cain?" asked quietly. Elara nodded. "She visited last night in a dream. She said the goddess is pleased with what we're building here." "And what about you?" Cain asked, his thumb brushing against her cheek. "Are you pleased?" Elara smiled. "I'm happy. For the first time in my life, I'm truly happy." Cain's expression softened, and he leaned down, capturing her lips in a kiss that was gentle, reverent, perfect. When they pulled apart, Elara rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "What about Garrett?" she asked quietly. Cain's body tensed slightly. "Still alive, still alpha, but his pack is a shadow of what it was. Most of the wolves left. The ones who stayed are either too loyal or too afraid to go." "Amira banished?" Cain said. "Garrett exiled her the day after we left. Last I heard, she was trying to join another pack, but no one will take her. Not after what she did." Elara felt a flicker of something, not satisfaction, but closure. "I don't hate her," she said softly. "I should, but I don't. I just don't pity her." "You're a better person than I am," Cain muttered. "I wanted to rip her apart." Elara smiled faintly. "I know. I felt it through the bond." Cain huffed a laugh. "Yeah, sorry about that." "Don't be." Elara pulled back to look at him. "I like that you're protective. I like that you'd fight for me. I'd die for you," Cain said simply. "I know." Elara's eyes softened. "But I'd rather you live for me." Cain's breath caught. "Always," he whispered. 1 month, Elatiartha Sanctuary had grown. What started as a handful of rogues and outcasts had become a thriving community. Over 50 wolves now called this place home, and at the center of it all stood Elara, Not as an alpha, not as a Luna, as something else entirely. A guide, a healer, a protector. She spent her days training young wolves to control their shifting, mediating disputes, and working with Cain to establish laws that valued fairness and compassion over dominance and fear. At night, she lay in Cain's arms, the mate bond thrumming between them like a living thing. They hadn't completed the mating ritual, yet Elara wasn't ready, and Cain never pushed. He was content to simply hold her, to be near her, to love her in whatever way she needed, and Elara loved him for it. "Do you ever regret it?" Cain asked one night as they lay beneath the stars. "Regret what?" "Leaving Silverpine, giving up your chance to be Luna." Elara turned to face him, her eyes soft. "I was never going to be Luna there," she said quietly. "They would have used me, broken me again." She reached up, cupping his face. "Here, with you. I'm free. That's all I've ever wanted." Cain's eyes glistened. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do," Elara said firmly. "You saved me, Cain. In every way a person can be saved." "You saved yourself," Cain corrected. "Held your hand while you did it." Elara smiled and kissed him softly. And as the moon rose above them, bathing them in silver light, the goddess's voice echoed through both of their minds. "You have done well, my children. You have taken your pain and turned it into purpose, your suffering and turned it into strength. And now I give you my final gift." Light surrounded them, soft, warm, eternal. And in that light, Elara felt the last of her wounds heal. The betrayal, the abandonment, the years of being told she was nothing. All of it, gone, replaced with love, with purpose, with peace. When the light faded, Cain was staring at her, his eyes wide. "Did you feel that?" he whispered. Quotes. "Yes. What was it?" Elara smiled, tears streaming down her face. "Healing. 5 years. The snow fell softly over the sanctuary. Elara stood at the edge of the territory, watching as young wolves played in the clearing below, chasing each other, laughing, free. So much had changed in 5 years. The sanctuary had become the largest neutral territory in Montana, place where wolves from any pack could come seeking refuge, justice, or simply a fresh start. Elara had never claimed the title of Alpha or Luna. Instead, the wolves called her something else. The moon marked. The goddess is chosen, the one who broke the chains. And beside her, every step of the way, was Cain. He stood now at her side, his arm wrapped around her waist, his presence steady and grounding. They had completed the mating ritual 3 years ago, a private ceremony beneath the full moon, witnessed only by the goddess herself. The bond between them was absolute, unbreakable, eternal. And 6 months ago, they had welcomed their first child, daughter. Silver-haired Galdenide, born with the crescent moon mark already glowing on her tiny wrist. They named her Selene, and she was everything. "She's awake," Cain murmured, nodding toward the small cabin behind them. Elara smiled. "I'll go." She found Selene sitting in her crib, her big golden eyes staring up at the ceiling, her tiny hand reaching toward the moonlight streaming through the window. Alara's chest tightened, with love so fierce it almost hurt. "Hey, little moon," she whispered, scooping her daughter into her arms. Selene giggled and grabbed a fistful of Elara's hair. "You're going to be so strong," Elara murmured, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "So much stronger than I ever was. And you'll never have to fight alone. I promise," Selene cooed, and the mark on her wrist glowed faintly. Behind her, Cain entered the room, his expression soft. "She's going to be a handful," he said, leaning against the doorway. "She's going to be amazing," Elara corrected. Cain smiled and crossed the room, wrapping his arms around both of them. For a moment, they just stood there, a family forged in pain, reborn in love. "Do you ever think about Silverpine?" Cain asked quietly. Elara considered. "Sometimes, but not with anger anymore. Just ... sadness for what it could have been." "Garrett's dead," Cain said. "Did you hear?" Elara stiffened. "When?" "Last week. Natural causes. Apparently, his heart just ... stopped." Elara was silent for a long moment. I don't feel anything, she said finally. I thought I would, but I don't. That's because you've moved on, Cain said gently. You've built something better. Elara looked down at Selene, who was already dozing off in her arms. We built it, she corrected. Together! Cain pressed a kiss to her temple. Always together. 10 years after that night in the snow, the sanctuary had become legend. Wolves traveled from across the country to see the moon-marked Luna and her rogue Alpha Thaper, who had shattered tradition and rebuilt it into something kinder. Elara trained young wolves to control their power. Cain led hunting parties and protected the borders, and Selene grew into a fierce, compassionate, extraordinary young wolf destined, perhaps, to carry on her mother's legacy. But on quiet nights, when the sanctuary was asleep and the moon hung high above, Elara and Cain would stand together at the edge of the forest, and Elara would think about the girl she used to be, broken, abandoned, left to die in the snow, and she would thank the goddess, not for the pain, but for what came after, for the rogue who had saved her, for the power that had awakened within her, for the love that had healed her, for the life she had built from the ashes of who she used to be. What are you thinking about? Cain asked one such night, his arm around her waist. Elara smiled. How grateful I am, she said softly, that you found me in the snow. Cain pulled her closer, his voice rough with emotion. I'll find you in every lifetime, little wolf, he whispered. In every world, in every form, I'll always find you. Elara turned in his arms and kissed him soft, slow, forever. And above them, the moon shone down, bright and eternal, a reminder that even in the darkest night, light can still break through, that even the most broken souls can be made whole, and that low, true, faded, destined love can survive anything, even death, even betrayal, even the snow.